Okay, so we're up to, yeah. So the prati is, it's also contrast milin de dioita, ordinary, as it were, common manifestations as opposed to sacred, holy. So he traced the distinction on all kinds of levels, all the way down to Pinimiyazah and Chitzoniyazah. And that is what he's explaining now. So he explained that there's two ways to plot the spheres, one below the other. That's in the regular Seder. As Chaim mentioned yesterday, the Seder of Tohu. It's true, he mentions it later that that's the Seder of Tohu, but it's the Seder of Tikkun also, B'chitzonius. It seems, the Maimon doesn't spell it out right, but it seems that it's through Avodah, it's only through Avodah that we have the configuration of Das connecting to Pnimiyas HaKeser and the Midas emerging B'chol Tokvam, and yet in all of the intensity and force, and yet harmonious. That doesn't happen naturally. That happens through Avodah. So that configuration of Tikkun is really the of Atzilus, is really the result of Avodah. The natural state is that at best the Midas can be softened and governed by Seichel, which is a Seder of Atzilus also. We'll see later about Toyot. At any rate, so what he's saying now is that when we have the Midas plotted, as it were, right, left, and center, so the center is the fusion of the two, which means it draws on the etzem to be able to combine opposites. And that's where Das doesn't simply appear. It doesn't appear at all below Chachma and Bina as it does in the regular Seder, but Das appears directly on the Keser. Which means that the Midas are in their full, deepest expression, and yet completely bottled. And that's because they are Midas from Etzem HaNefesh. So the example we gave yesterday was the different Yomim Tovim and the different states, Simcha, etc. So there's one state to be in, a controlled intellectual state. Okay, now it's Montzach, now the Avodah is Simcha, so it's all based on the Seichel, his understanding, so he's Besimcha. Tisha B'Av, now it's morning, so he mourns. There's no radical difference in his states. This is obviously Simcha, and this is mourning, but it's all dominated by Seichel. But then there's the Avodah, then there's the Avodah where he's in all of these different Eifanim, he's in a full state of intense emotional expression. It's not bestira. Look at the person, how was it you were dancing yesterday and crying today? The Eibishter said yesterday dance, the Eibishter said that cry. So if it's rooted in the Eibishter said, it's not Etzem HaNefesh, it's B'chol Tokva, completely intense, unbridled, and yet not bestira to the other midah. In other words, it will recede immediately if the Avodah now demands something else, which is not the nature of midas. They don't just at will recede and allow the opposite midah to express itself. An emotional state is an emotional state. It takes a whole intellectual process normally to get over it, etc., and then transition to another emotional state. But this Avodah is a very high Avodah. It doesn't need any transitional intellectual bridges, because his midas are coming from Etzem HaNefesh, and therefore A, B'chol Tokvam, B, can be the opposite one the next moment, if that's what's called for. That's Bittul B'Metzius. I think we finished the paragraph, yeah? Huh? Achamitis, yeah, so Achamitis, so now it'll be 4 lines, you have a different layout, so it's 4 lines approximately from the bottom of the 3rd paragraph of Veis Gimel. Yeah? Achamitis in Iskalulus. Who, but the true Iskalulus, the true integration Even as the midas are in their intense expression, not softened, manipulated by seichel, but drawn on the etzem hanefesh, yesh beim iskalulus, there's bittul there as well. V'iskalul zu ayidam shachas das elyon, and how is that? Not the lower das in the first seder, das tachten, where das is a mekabel from chacham and bina, and simply serves as the conduit, very important conduit, but a conduit from chacham and bina to seichel. Here it's to midas, I'm sorry. Here das elyon is a direct connection to pnimius hakeser. Shemamshich with pnimius hakeser. Here, because das elyon draws from pnimius hakeser, shemagib pnimius vatzim serin sof, which is rooted in the essence of the Eibishter himself. Shonimna nimnois, he is hidden from the hidden. In other words, the etzem. So hidden means tam blikvul, but hidden from the hidden means beyond even blikvul, and therefore it can have this these opposite midas, which in their own worlds are incompatible. They are compatible and betokvam in complete iskalulus. We clear in all of this, yeah. Mitzad zeh nasa bitl of iskalulus by midas gam kifi shein betokvam, and that's the tachlis avodah. That's only from the pnimius. Again, what does pnimius mean? Pnimius means the inner intent. Pnimius carries through the inner intent of Atzmus, of the Eibishter himself. And what is that? That is creation, b'chol tokva, and completely bottom. Chitzonius hakavana, as it were, is a mellowing of creation, a softening of the midas, harmonious, a nice sky, beautiful life, beautiful. The kavan is intensity and craziness. It is the toyo, but in kedem tikkun, but integrated, notwithstanding the intensity and the absoluteness of each expression of a likus. Yeah? Let's continue. I'm going to give a marshal gashmi from the way the physical body works for this. This kind of iskalulus, again, the midas b'chol tokvam, mepchines pnimius zo dafke. Zo are the midas. This won't happen at the external dimension of the midas, but as the midas are rooted, pnimius, as they're rooted and connected directly to the essentials, their essential source. So let's have now a moshel from Poshet, the way the guf works, or the keichas hanefesh. We'll understand this by way of a moshel, a person down here. That all of the different limbs are integrated. Letting blood from one limb, heals a second limb, and the whole body. So we see that that one limb is fundamentally connected to the entire rest of the body. Body, that's in the case of illness, illustration of illness where bloodletting was the common form of healing, allowing the blood to rejuvenate itself. Body, we even see in a healthy body. So the feet keep the head standing upright, and it's through the feet, the legs, can go wherever you want. This is an illustration of a complete integration of each limb being b'chol tokvei. The leg isn't softened here. It's doing what it does. It's running very fast. And what is it doing? The head wants to go. It's completely biskalulus with another limb in the body simultaneously. Well, an interesting example and more subtle is iskalus hakoichas. I mean, hakoichas mean not the physical limbs, but the faculties, the talents, as it were. Writing. When you write, the intellect is guiding the writing. To write an intellectual idea, the intellect has to be invested in the hand. Movement of the leg, of the foot. The intellect is guiding it. And even even if a person moves his hand and foot without being consciously aware of it, on the contrary, it's even a deeper level the nefesh is invested there. It's the will. Even though the act of movement is a very low external koyach, in order that movement should be effective, there's a cause. So this is a skalulus bepnimius. Bepnimius, the seichel is in the hand, the rotzen is moving the leg. And it's a skalulus there where each of these faculties are on their full expression. On miskalus zu bepnimius ayvorim, but this is only bepnimius. Looking at the body externally, so there are different worlds. Intellect is seichel and the hand is a hand. Every limb is a mix. It's made up of in a murkav and it's a graft to levels of mixing each individual limb in a way that's appropriate for his inyan. The stuff of the hand is not the same as the stuff of the brain or the eye. So the whole makeup of the eye is very different to be able to see than the physical makeup of the ear to hear. That's bechitzonius. But bepnimius, we illustrated there can be full integration between the koiches. Where's the true iskalus of each of the midas in their full intensity and yet fully integrated and harmonious? That's dafka bepnimius. Each one is its own world. Chesed is chesed, gevura is gevura. Kind of clear? Yeah, the marshal here. So now we'll go back to what Asar Mamora is, and even as a Sfiris, he said, even as a Sfiris Amilin de Edyoita are common or external compared to, as Yaakov was saying, Manoira Hamokim Mazeh, the Beis HaMikdash. And as the Targum points out that what Yaakov was saying, this is not an ordinary place. He invokes that hadiyat level. It's not that. Rather, it's ma'anoira mokim mazen and so on. So now to go back to Pisa Yuvnik Benegel Asaram Amodos. So likewise, Asaram Amodos, which the Zohar says explicitly, is million dead yoita, is ordinary words, common words. Not the way of the king to use or to entertain himself with ordinary words. The Asor of Maimor is Malchus. So the Asor of Maimor which create, that's Chitzoni Yizah. Because that's not the Kavanah Pnimius, it's not creation. It's what we bring to creation by drawing and revealing the Pnimius, right? So the creative process is from Chitzoni Yizah and Shechos and Beifin Shal Yischalkos. So how does it emerge? It emerges in a way where each midah is distinct and separate from the other. Look at creation, each day of creation, that was what happened. Mira midah or svira pratis, an individual svira illuminated and created and was responsible for the creations of that day. Each one very different. Yom Rishon was only chesed, so what was created then? Light, what's chesed? Chesed is his pashtus. Shabli agbolis, no limits. Okay, as we see this to the extent Being an ocean, being Marishan, the light that was created the first day, that Hashem subsequently hid, two opinions we learned. Shoy Adam Marishan Mabed by Misefer Elam HaTsefer, with which Adam Marishan could see from one end of the world to the other. The diak is Sefer Elam, no Helam, end of concealment. It illuminates, implodes concealment. That was what Yom Rishon, pure, unbridled Oir Chesed, Bligvul. Yom Sheni was the opposite. Yom Sheni here midas hagvura beli skalus hachesed, but on Yom Sheni was gvura without the integration of Chesed. So what do we see happen on Yom Sheni? So therefore, the expanse, the sky was created, which did what? Hamavdil ben mayim lemoyim, that separated between the upper waters and the lower waters. What does this mean? So now comes Gevura, which is divisive, Tzimtzum, and so on, Nasis, Chalkas, Vavdola, Binyan, Amayim. So the Inyan of water now, there's two kinds of water now, and they're opposites. Shvatzmich, call many Tainug. The Inyan of water, Bachlal, is associated with Tainug. He says in Tanya that water causes things to grow lush, and all kinds of pleasurable things. So now there's an upper water and a lower water. Bein Tanugim HaRuchnim, but Tanugim HaGashmim. There's spiritual delight and pleasure, that's the heavenly waters. And there's physical pleasures, and not just physical, but even unholy, the opposite of Kedusha. All that happens because of the drastic effect of Midas HaGvura. But only it's only in the third day, that Tiferes is illuminated, showing in a Iskalus and not canal. That Tiferes is going to be Iskalus. Now this is again all pre-Avodah. The Iskalus here is not the same kind of Iskalus that Avodah effect, which is the Midas B'tok form and yet harmonized. But Hashem already puts this into nature. We're not asked to completely, it's a revolution we have to make. But the revolution is really inherent within nature. It's all here. Just take it to the next level. So Iskalus exists already. So what do we see on
That's why they went this through Tiferes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the Habayis. Yaakov is the Shleimus of the Avodah. Right? So what's Tiferes? Habayis Mamoros. Tiferes is Torah. Right? Habayis Mamoros. So on Tuesday, on this third day, we should say, were two Mamoros, not one. Harmony. Because he and Tiferes already have the Inyan of Chesed and Gevura. In brackets, here we're pointing to the Mile of Tiferes, which is the Iskalus. On the sixth day also, there are two Maimoros. The animals and man. That's because Taka Yesod also had these two components. What's the two in Yonim that's unique to Yesod? Hashpah Chitzonis, Hashpah Pnimis. Yesod carries with it a Chitzonis dik Hashpah and a Pnimis dik Hashpah. Begashmis in brackets with Rachmoshel Lamato. This is with round brackets and the square brackets. All to explain Yom Shishi. Rachmoshel Lamato yesh Hashpah Seichel. So there's the Hashpah Seichel. Shishpah Chitzonius, that's Hashpah Chitzonius, giving over a Seichel, which requires Yesod. It requires that the teacher bond with the student and come out with the right words that the kid can understand, the student can understand. Right? The teacher can be in his own world. But that's it. That's Hashpah Chitzonius. What's Hashpah Pnimius? Hashpah Atipa, Hashpah Atipa, Hashpah Pnimius. The Tipa is Hashpah Pnimius. As explained at length in Chassidus. It's evident from the fact that from the Tipa grows a child that's bedoimer to the father and mother, even beyond the father and mother. Latent koiches that are within the father and mother can come to expression in the child. Yafa koicha ben, min koicha av. So that's the Hashpah Pnimius. And that draws on the Tipa comes from the Etzem HaMoichin. But seichel is chitzonius hamoichin. We've encountered that. I forgot the dibra maschal, the maimer, but we.
How come he's elaborating or giving a mashal for the two levels, the continuous continuous of Yisod on the sixth day, but not of Tiferes on the third day? He's using the Yisod to sort of to help understand Tiferes.
No. He's just saying that there's Hiskalulus, obviously on the third day, Tiferes, but there's also Hiskalulus to Maimoris on the sixth day. That's because there's two inyonim.
And then helping us understand the two of Yanim on the sixth day, but what we really want to understand is on the third day.
No, it's in square brackets, just to say, you have a kasha is a teretz in Pashtus. The reason why because they're two similar to Tiferes, is there's two inyonim there happening. And what is it? He spells out further, close brackets in a moment. First, there's Hashem's statement that the earth should issue forth living creatures. That's mashpach hitzonius. Umay menase Adam, shein ledes hanesham is mashpach pnimius. Right? So animal life, and then the human being, which on Bechitzonius is like an animal also, but makes him different is the neshama, and that's Hashpah Pnimius, and square brackets. All to say that, that in the union of Yisod is also a scholarless of two inyanim. Mind you, if you're comparing to Tiferes, it's not as dramatic as Tiferes, in a way, because Tiferes is two opposites, Chesed and Gevurah. Here, the scholarless is Chitzonius and Pnimius. But the Chitzonius and Pnimius here, be scholarless, they're very different. Hashpos HaSeichel, Hashpos HaTipah, Chayes HaSodeh, or Neshamas Yisrael. Anyway, I'm sure there's more here, obviously. I think we get a general idea. Yeah? So now going back to the Asar HaMamoris. The Asar HaMamoris overall, a million dead yoita, because therefore they become beschalkos. There's no really scholarless. The scholarless begins where on the Yom Shlishi. Yom Shlishi, the begins the scholar. We're pointing out here, it's still not, again, the scholars that comes as a result of Avodah, which is the Etzem HaMidus. But at any rate, already that dynamic, that model of Iskalos already emerges in the property of Tiferes on the third day. So now, in the way the Sfiris are plotted, the Ze'al Gam, Klolas Hefesh Bein Toyo L'Tikun, this is the general difference. Kiddush b'Toyo ha'matzav ha'Sfiris tachazeh. Toyo, it's only one below the other. U'b'Tikun heim begimel kavin. And in Tikun, it's in these three because the central shaft is Iskalulus. But Tikun Gufa, but in Tikun itself, it also has the external model, which we said, right, of one below the other. Who are Hefesh ben Chitzonius the Pnimius. What's not L'chura, if I'm proven wrong, I'll be happy to hear it. But L'chura, in Tikun, the Gimel Kavin is Mitzad Avodah. Mitzad Avodah, that is what changes, and the Midas are drawn from Etzem HaNefesh. It's not the natural process. The natural process of Atzilus, of Tikkun, is Bechitzonius, one below the other. What draws from Etzem HaNefesh, and that's only through, it's not natural, because Pnimius HaKeser is not naturally in this Gala, in Ishtalshalis. It's only in this Gala through our Avodah Lamata. And the Avodah Lamata is Etzem HaNefesh, Kabbalah Zil, Atat Tetzaveh, all these inyonim. Right? So, the Maim is not saying that in black and white, but that seems to be. Why? Because, what?
In the end, you're saying that the Sarah Maris, which are Tzonius and Salfus, you already described that they're in the Gimel Kavin already.
That's Mitzad Pnimius. The Gimel Kavin is only Mitzad the Pnimius. And what unlocks the Pnimius is Avodah. Yeah? Sheikering and Iskalus and Bechinis Pnimius are the true Iskalus, as we said before, is Pnimius are, and as we explained earlier, that's when the Midas are betakvam and completely integrated. So therefore, given Shas, this is clear. Shasorim Amoris and Bechinis Chitzonius are. So the Masor Amoris come from Chitzonius. Why? Because creation is not the Kavanah Pnimius per se. Creation sets the stage. Now a Yid comes along and does Avodah. So that's all the chitzonius of Elikus. Shalchein B'chinas Ischalkus canal. Therefore, it creates a way of Ischalkus. True, since Tiferes is Inyan of Tiferes, already in creation, instead of Maimonides is this element of harmony, but it's in the doimet to the harmony completely that it is brought to bear when revealing the Pnimius Hamidus, which happens through the Shomas Yisrael and our Avodah.
So the description of Tiferes here in this paragraph is just to show that there's this latent Iskalus within the...
Well, it's not so latent. There was a manifested Iskalus on day 2, on day 3, the Beis Maimoris.
But it doesn't create a general. It's still.
It's like the Iskalus of Midas as a result of Seichel. It waters down the Chesed and Gevurah. Like Chesed is an overriding agenda, a harmonious world, and so things are tempered and work harmoniously. The Kavon is the Torah B'Kerim to Tikkun. Again, there's craziness, but an integrated craziness. Like we said before, in Avodah, it is that each moment that he's in is B'chol Tokvei. It's Simcha now, it's Simcha B'chol Tokvei, and Tisha B'av is Tisha B'chol Tokvei. And Yom Kippur is Yom Kippur, and is he crazy? Look at the person, one day is like this, one day like that. He's not crazy. Adarab, because it's all Etzem HaNefesh expressing, then the Midas are B'chol Tokvei. We said a moment before also. Then even when the Midas B'chol Tokvei, the next second, if the Kavanah Pnimi says another Midah, boom, completely withdraws, and the other Midah is B'chol Tokvei, which doesn't work in the Chitzonius HaMidas. Just immediate turn on and turn off. You have to have a whole seichel and a whole therapy. It's a ganze avodah. The Emir says, we saw it by the Rebbe, obviously. Actually, it's running out of time. Tomorrow we'll elaborate, but this is only mitzad ha'etzem. It's only mitzad, the Pnimius Mamish mitzad ha'etzem, they can have this very intense midas, and then another midah.
I've heard Professor Brower tell us several times this story.
Yeah.
The Rebbe and the Shabbos of the Shiva for the Rebbe.
Yeah.
The Shabbos itself is no one thought it would be bringing. So for bringing it was the Simcha, and no one would have known. And the moment Abdallah was made, and his face touch had changed. He said he was there.
He was there. Yeah. And we saw it also by this Takas that Frierdiker Rebbe was on Shabbos.
Oh, so on Shabbos you wouldn't have known.
People said you could not see Rebbe say anything. And Rebbe cried for the next 20 years, 25 years. But he saw even by the Fabrengen also, it's only an Atzmi can do this. By the Fabrengen, when the Rebbe, could cry in the Maimer, etc., a person emotional, then the emotion, kind of peters out, and but even in the Fabrengen, the crying, then the Fabrengen could stand up and be B'simcha Gedoyla. And see, without learning any chassidus, nobody, even the person that came the first time to Fabrengen doesn't know anything, watched the person, didn't think that there was something strange here. Who is this person? What is he? He cried now, he's dancing. Wouldn't find it strange, because just the etzem on the neshama, in its absolute purity, this was simcha, and this was prius, and this was simcha. And it wasn't strange to the observer. Now we had to understand it, looking at chassidus, where this comes from. But it didn't need the explanation. Because the simcha was a different simcha, and the tears were different tears. It wasn't a subjective emotional state. Subjective, emes, atzmizdik, mitzad kavon el yoyne simcha, kavon el yoyne tears of Yidden suffering in Golas. Right? This concludes v'lachenim kroim million dead yoita, and therefore some mamoras are called million dead yoita. Right? It can be continued tomorrow.